السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الحمد لله الذي جعل الصيام من فرائض الإسلام وأعاده علينا كل عام، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وسلم عليه وعليهم إلى يوم الدين. To proceed, this is explanation of the book فضل صيام رمضان وقيامه مع بيان أحكام مهمة قد تخفى على بعض الناس. Virtues of fasting and praying in Ramadan, along with clarification of important rulings which might not be known to some people. We chose the explanation of the book looking at the current time and approach of Ramadan. And the most beneficial of knowledge is that which the slave learns to fulfill his obligations correctly and to motivate himself to keep him on the straight path. And before we begin with the explanation, it is a must that we give two introductions. Introduction number one, introduction to the author. He is the Sheikh and the role model, Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah bin Abdurrahman Ibn Baz. He is given the kunya Abu Abdullah, and he is known as Ibn Baz. And he was born in the year 1330 in Riyadh. He studied and benefited from multiple scholars of his time, including Hamad ibn Faris, Sa'ad ibn Atiq, Muhammad bin Abdul Latif al-Sheikh, and Muhammad bin Ibrahim al-Sheikh. A huge number of students benefited from him and lived long, such that he taught the grandfather and the grandchild of the same family. Among his students are Fahad bin Humayyin, Muhammad ibn Uthaymeen, Salih bin Fawzan, Abdullah ibn Jibreen. He left behind a good number of writings. Among them are At-Tahqiq wal-Idah and Naqd al-Qawmiyyah al-Arabiyyah, which is from one of the best of his all writings. He was made the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia and continued until he passed away on 27th Muharram 1420, corresponding to 1999, at the age of 90. Rahimahullahu rahmatan wasi'a. May Allah have mercy on him, his immense mercy. Introduction number two, introduction to the book. The name of this book is Virtues of Fasting and Praying in Ramadan, along with clarification of important rulings which might not be known to some people. This is in fact a letter of the author and is part of the collection of his works named Majmu' Fatawa Ibn Baz, which was read to him in his lifetime. The topic of this book is clear from the name itself. So it has mention of fasting in the month of Ramadan, praying during its night, along with some important rulings which might not be known to some people. And the author added in the introduction that from his objectives is to mention the virtue of competing in righteous deeds during it. Due to the benefits in this book, it has been published multiple times and thousands of its copies have been distributed freely throughout the kingdom and in other countries. Along with that, it has been explained by multiple scholars. So now we'll begin with the reading of the book. As the author, may Allah have mercy on him, said, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, from Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah Ibn Baz to the one who happens to read this. May Allah place me and them on the path of people of Iman and give tawfiq to me and them to gain understanding of Sunnah and the Quran. May peace and Allah's mercy and His blessings be upon you. To proceed, this is a concise advice related to virtue of fasting the month of Ramadan, praying during its nights, and the virtue of competing in righteous deeds during it, along with important rulings which might not be known to some people. It is proven that the Prophet ﷺ used to give glad tidings to his companions regarding the arrival of the month of Ramadan, and would inform them that in this month the gates of mercy and the gates of paradise are opened, the gates of hell are closed, and the devils are chained. He ﷺ said, when the first night of Ramadan comes, the doors of paradise will be opened, so none of its doors remain closed, and the doors of hell will be closed, so none of its doors remain unopened, and the devils will be chained, and a caller will call out, O you who desires virtue, come forth, and O you who desires evil, stay behind. And Allah has people whom He frees from hell every night in that month. He ﷺ also said, you have been approached by a blessed month, during which Allah shades you, so He reveals His mercy, forgives sins, responds to supplications, and looks at your competition in virtuous deeds, and boasts in front of the angels about them. So show Allah from yourselves that which is good, because the miserable one is he who is deprived from the mercy of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever fasts in Ramadan out of faith, anticipating the reward of Allah, then all his prior sins to that will be forgiven. And whoever prays night prayers in Ramadan out of faith, anticipating the reward of Allah, then all his sins prior to that will be forgiven. And whoever prays night prayers in Laylatul Qadr out of faith, anticipating the reward of Allah, then all his sins prior to that will be forgiven. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Allah Azza wa Jal says, all the deeds of the son of Adam are for him. The good deeds are multiplied from 10 multiples in reward up to 700 multiples, except for fasting. It is for me, and I will reward it accordingly, for he left his desires, food and drink for my sake. The fasting person has two times when he will rejoice, one at the time he breaks his fast, and one when he meets his Lord. I swear by the one in whose hand my soul is, the smell of the mouth of fasting person is better in the sight of Allah than the smell of musk. The narrations on the virtue of fasting in Ramadan, praying during its nights, and fasting in general are many. The author began with Bismillah, sufficing with it, following the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his writings and the letters which he used to send to the kings. So, if a person were to write a letter, it is from the sunnah that you begin your letter with Bismillah. And although today people don't send letters in the way it was sent before in the envelopes, but still you have the modern emails and such modern forms of letters in which a person may apply this sunnah. And he began by saying from Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah Ibn Baz, following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, that when you want to write a letter, you begin by mentioning from the name of the sender. So the author, he wrote his name Abdul Aziz bin Abdullah Ibn Baz. So from this we get to know that Abdul Aziz is the name of the author, and he is the son of Abdullah. And then he put Ibn Baz after writing bin Abdullah. And the difference between bin and ibn is that bin is what you write when the immediate father's name is written. And Ibn is what you write when one of the grandfather's name is written who is not the immediate grandfather. So, for example, if you were to write the name of the author by mentioning his name along with his father's name, along with his grandfather's name, and his great grandfather's name, then you would write Abdulaziz bin Abdullah bin Abdurrahman and so on, because those are connected, the chain is connected. But when the chain is broken and when you skip few fathers in between and you mention someone much before, then you write Ibn. And this is the opinion of many of the scholars of the Arabic language. However, some of the other scholars they follow the view that there is no real difference between the word bin and ibn, and you can use them both interchangeably. But what is famous among the Arabs is this. So he said from Abdulaziz bin Abdullah Ibn Baz in the beginning of the letter to show that this is only a letter and not a huge book. So it is a demonstration of the fact that it is going to be a short and comprehensive one. So he says from Abdulaziz bin Abdullah ibn Baz to the one who happens to read this, meaning whoever happens to read this letter, it is for him. He says, may Allah place me and them on the path of the people of Iman, making dua for himself and others for guidance from Allah Azza wa Jal. And from the Sunnah is that when you make dua for others, you proceed for yourself. So when you say, may Allah guide them, it is from the Sunnah for you to say, may Allah guide me and them. So whenever you want to make dua, you make dua for yourself first and then others. But if someone were to make dua for others alone, then that is not an issue. And then he said, and may he give tawfiq to me and them to gain understanding of Sunnah and the Quran. And tawfiq, it means to make easy. So the translation would be, and to give and to make it easy for me and them to gain the understanding of the Sunnah and the Quran. And he mentioned the Sunnah and the Quran instead of the Quran and the Sunnah, because in the previous dua he said, may Allah place me and them on the path of people of Iman. So because he wanted to rhyme his dua, he mentioned Sunnah and the Quran. So he said, as is the dua in the Arabic, Salakallahu bi wa bihim sabila ahl al-iman ووفقني الله ووفقني وإياهم للفقه في السنة والقرآن. So Iman and Quran, they both rhyme with each other. So that is why he mentioned the Sunnah before the Quran. And in general, it is better to mention the Quran before the Sunnah. But changing that is acceptable for the sake of making the speech beautiful. And he said after that, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and Allah's mercy and His blessings be upon you. And the author chose to mention Salamun alaikum instead of Assalamu alaikum. And both these ways are correct if a person want to use. And very often in the Quran, the word Salamun alaikum is used instead of Assalamu alaikum. But what became legislated and the sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ was that he would say Assalamu alaikum instead of Salamun alaikum. Although if you were to say Salamun alaikum, then there would be no wrong with it. But the Prophet chose to say Assalamu alaikum, then it is better for you to say that. And because Salam is one of the adhkar, then what we know as a rule is that the more the letters in the adhkar, the more the reward. So for every letter you get the reward. So because there is an extra alif lam in Assalamu alaikum, then you get more reward when you say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Then the author, he said, to proceed, this is a concise advice related to virtue of fasting the month of Ramadan, praying during its night, and virtue of competing in righteous deeds during it, along with important rulings which might not be known to some people. So he mentioned the objective of this letter in this paragraph very clearly. And then he said, it is proven that the Prophet ﷺ used to give glad tidings to his companions regarding the arrival of the month of Ramadan till the end. So he begins by saying that the Prophet ﷺ would give glad tidings to his companions regarding the arrival of this month, showing that Ramadan is a month which deserves our happiness and our attention. And Ramadan is the 9th month of the Hijri calendar. So the calendars that are popular today in this world are many, like the solar calendar that is being followed today internationally, the Hijri calendar which is followed by the Muslims, which is the lunar calendar based on the moon, and you have the Chinese calendar and many more calendars which the people follow. And Ramadan is the 9th month of the Hijri calendar, which comes immediately after the month of Shaban. So when the month of Shaban would be about to end, the Prophet ﷺ, he would begin to count the nights until it would become 30, or he would be looking for the moon, waiting for the month of Ramadan to begin, because the lunar calendar, the months in this calendar begin with the new moon. And the author then he went on to mention, and he would sallallahu alaihi wasallam inform them that in this month the gates of mercy and the gates of paradise are open, the gates of hell are closed, and the devils are chained. He sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when the first night of Ramadan comes, the doors of paradise will be opened, so none of its doors remain closed, and the doors of hell will be closed, so none of its doors remain opened, until the end of the hadith. And in the various ahadith, you will find this meaning and a hadith of a little bit different meaning. So there are some narrations which mention that the doors of paradise will be opened, and this you will find in both Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim, which are the two most authentic books of hadith. And you will find in some of the narrations the doors of mercy will be opened. And this you will find in Sahih Bukhari. And in some of the narrations, you would find the doors of heavens will be opened. And this you will find in the narration of Sahih Muslim. So there is one narration which is that the gates of paradise will be opened, and it is there in both Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. And in Sahih Bukhari, there's one narration which mentions the doors of mercy will be opened, and there's one narration in Sahih Muslim which mentions the doors of mercy, heavens will be opened. Some of the scholars viewed that these words, mercy and paradise and heavens, are of the same meaning, and some of them viewed that they are of different meanings and interpreted them differently. So, those who interpreted it in the same meaning, it was the great scholar Imam Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani rahimahullah in his explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari. So he viewed that all these narration they mean that the gates of Jannah are opened, and what proves it is that the Prophet ﷺ, after mentioning that the gates of Jannah are opened, he mentioned in the hadith that the gates of hell are closed. And those scholars who said that they are of different meanings, they said that what is meant by that the gates of Jannah are open is that the gates of Jannah are literally opened. And what is meant by the gates of mercy is that, and what is meant by the gates of heavens is that the gates of heavens, the seven heavens, each have a gate, then each of the gates are opened in the month of Ramadan. And what is meant by the gates of mercy, they said that it means that Allah makes it easy for the people to do good deeds in this month. What is meant by the opening of the gates of mercy is that Allah makes it easy to do good deeds in this month. And the gates of mercy, Abwab ar-Rahmah, we use this as a dua and a dhikr when we enter the masjid. So we say before entering the masjid, as is the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he would say, Allahumma ftah li abwab rahmatik. O Allah, open for me the gates of mercy. And what is meant by opening of the gates of mercy is, O Allah, make it easy for me to do the good deeds. And then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, the doors of hell are closed. And some of the scholars were of the view that the doors of Jannah being opened and the doors of hell being closed are not in the literal meaning, but what it means is that Allah makes us easy in this month to do good deeds. But that interpretation, which was done by Ibn Khuzaymah in his Sahih, in spite of it having a valid interpretation, we say that it is not correct to say that it should not be understood in the literal meaning, because whatever the Prophet ﷺ said or whatever is there in the Quran, we must take it in the literal meaning unless and until we have a clear proof against that. So when the Prophet ﷺ said that the great gates of paradise are opened, we must believe that the gates of paradise are open. And this was the view of Qadi Iyad al-Yahshubi. And then the Prophet ﷺ said that the devils are chained. The scholars differed so as to what is meant by the devils are chained. Are all of them chained, or is it some of them? So there was the first group of scholars who said that all of them are chained, and there's a second group which said that some of them are chained. And the correct view, or to say the more correct view, is that all of the shayateen are chained, be it the big devils or the smaller devils, because this again is the literal meaning of the hadith. So we should go along with the literal meaning instead of giving it other interpretations. And then after this hadith, the author mentioned three other narrations in the virtue of this month. He mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ also said, "You have been approached by a blessed month." The complete narration. This narration has mention of the virtue of the month of Ramadan, because it mentions that it is a blessed month during which Allah shades you. And what is meant by the shading of Allah Azza wa Jal becomes clear when we read the other part of the hadith, where the Prophet ﷺ said, "So he reveals his mercy, forgives sins, responds to the supplications, and looks at your competition in virtuous deeds, and boasts in front of the angels about them." So Allah Azza wa Jal in this month, He reveals His mercy, meaning He makes it easy for us to do good deeds, as we mentioned earlier, and forgives the sins. So Allah Azza wa Jal in this month, He forgives the sins of the sinners, how much ever sins they have done, if they seek forgiveness from Allah and repent to Him. And in this month, Allah responds to the supplications, meaning Allah answers the prayers and the du'as of the people. And in the Quran, where Allah Azza wa Jal mentions about Ramadan, Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran, and the ayat go on and on discussing about different issues of Ramadan in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah. But in between these ayat, you find the ayah where Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ. And when my slave asks me about me, then I am close. And when my slave asks you about me, then I am close. So Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned about dua in the middle of the discussion of Ramadan to clarify that Allah Azza wa Jal answers the dua, especially in the month of Ramadan. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, looks at your competition in virtuous deeds and boasts in front of the angels. So, so, so show Allah from yourselves that which is good, because the miserable one is he who is deprived from the mercy of Allah. So, in this month, Allah Azza wa Jal boasts in front of the angels of the actions and the worship of the slaves in this month. So, if you were to worship Allah in the night, Allah would boast in front of the angels that look at Ahmed, look at Carlo, look at Hamza, look at my slave who is worshipping me standing at night while a lot of people have busied themselves with evil things which do not benefit them. And look at my slave who is fasting, who is not eating, not drinking, although he wants to eat and drink, and is not at all used to this type of fasting. And the Prophet ﷺ said, so show Allah from yourselves that which is good. So because Allah is going to mention you in front of the angels and going to boast about you, due to you, in front of the angels, then this is something definitely you should try to achieve, because people in this world, they try to gain the reputation of the people and gain honor in front of the people. You know, if someone doesn't has a good car, he wants to have a good car so that other people see him. Oh, the mudir is coming, the manager is coming. And they try to keep few servants to show that they are of VIP class, and they try to have a good car and good house and wear proper suits, so that if someone were to see them, they would not think that this person is a poor person. They would automatically begin to think that this is a VIP person who deserves to be respected. So people do so much that they even sacrifice sometimes their own their own honor for the sake of pleasing the people and the creation. If this is how much others can do to please the creation, then how much more can we do to please Allah Azza wa Jal? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said at the end, because the miserable one is the one who is deprived from the mercy of Allah. Meaning, the miserable is the one who does not get the mercy of Allah in this month, in spite of all this, in spite of the fact that Allah wants to forgive everyone in this month, in spite of the fact that Allah opens the door of Jannah and closes the doors of Jahannam, and in spite of the fact that Allah chains the devils so that no devil comes to you and whispers you to do evil things. So Allah makes things easy for you, and He is looking for ease for you, and still you are not at all willing to turn to Allah Azza wa Jal, then such a person is a miserable person without any doubt. And then the author mentioned the second narration in the third narration in the virtue of Ramadan. So he said, whoever fasts in Ramadan out of faith, anticipating the reward of Allah, al-Hadith. And this hadith mentions three things. It mentions that if a person were to fast in the month of Ramadan out of faith, anticipating the reward of Allah, then all of his sins would be forgiven. And the same for the person who prays the night prayers in Ramadan, and the same for the person who prays the night prayers in the night of decree, the Laylatul Qadr. So the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that people will be forgiven for three things. The first thing is fasting in Ramadan. The second is praying in the night of Ramadan. And the third thing is praying in the night of decree, the Laylatul Qadr. And he mentioned the conditions of forgiveness, and those are two for each of them. That when you fast or you pray, it must be out of Iman, out of faith. So when you fast, you should fast for the sake of Allah, not for the sake of the people around you. That because the people are fasting, I'll also fast. And because the people are praying, I'll also pray. But fast because Allah deserves your worship, and pray because Allah deserves your worship. And the second condition is that you should anticipate the reward of Allah. You should hope for the reward from Allah. So when you're doing all this, you should not hope any type of reward from other people and anyone from the creation, but all that your hope should be is that you hope in the reward of Allah, that is the Jannah and the face of Allah Himself. And then the author mentioned the fourth narration. But before we mention the fourth narration, we'll mention what is Laylatul Qadr. Laylatul Qadr is the night in which Allah Azza wa Jal revealed the Quran. And this night does not has a fixed date, but it is a night which occurs in the last 10 nights of Ramadan. So the last 10 nights of Ramadan, meaning beginning from 20 to the 30th of Ramadan, Laylatul Qadr is a possibility. So if a person wants to gain the reward that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned of forgiveness, then you will have to pray in the last 10 nights regularly so that you gain the reward. And then the Prophet ﷺ, and then the next hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah Azza wa Jal says, all the deeds of the son of Adam are for him. The good deeds are multiplied from 10 multiples in reward up to 700 multiples. Al-Hadith. And in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said that Allah Azza wa Jal says. So this hadith is not a statement of the Prophet himself, but it mentions the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal. And a hadith which mentions the statement of Allah, it is called Hadithun Ilahi. The hadith which mentions the statement of Allah is called Hadithun Ilahi, because most of the narrations which mention the statement of Allah, it mentions Allah Azza wa Jal says. The scholars would call it Hadith Ilahi. So most of the early scholars, you would find in their writings that they say, "Wafil Hadith al Ilahi," in the Hadith al Ilahi, this and this. And this was the most common term for such a narration. But among the later scholars, it became popular that they used the term Hadithun Qudsi, the sacred Hadith. And some of the scholars use the word Hadithun Rabbani, Hadithun Rabbani. And that is because some of the narrations you find in them that the Prophet ﷺ said that قال الرب عز وجل, قال الرب عز وجل, the Rabb said. So that is why the scholars called, some of the scholars call this hadith Hadithur Rabbani, because it mentions that the Rabb says. So the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah Azza wa Jalla said, all the deeds of the son of Adam are for him, the good deeds are multiplied from 10 multiples and reward up to 700 multiples. So all the good deeds of son of Adam are for him, meaning anything good that you do for the sake of Allah are for you, because whatever you do, it is your investment for the hereafter, which you will find its return without any doubt. And the opposite is the case for the good that you do, the actions which you do for the sake of this life, because your earning of wealth, your earning of reputations and whatnot, your house and car and everything will go away. Your family would go away, your wife and children and parents. Once you depart from this world, you would depart your own body as well. So the body for which you care so much, your body itself is not yours. So what you should concern for yourself is your soul, and that what would help it in the hereafter. So Allah Azza wa Jalla says all the deeds of son of Adam are for him, meaning all the good deeds, all the acts of worship you do, your patience in doing it, your thankfulness to Allah Azza wa Jalla, everything is for your own benefit. And he says the good deeds are multiplied from 10 multiples in reward up to 700 multiples. So the good deed, all of them, they are multiplied. And Allah said in the Quran, Man ja'a bil hasanati falahu ashra amthaliha. So for every deed that you do, you don't get one reward for it, but you get the reward that you deserve for it multiplied into 10. So there is no good deed that you do for which you get only the reward that you deserve, but you get more 10 times than what you deserve. And Allah increases it up to 700 multiples depending on your sincerity and how you did the action and fulfilled it. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla said, except for fasting. So the general rule for all the good deeds is that Allah Azza wa Jalla multiplies it from 10 multiples in reward up to 700. But that is not the case for fasting. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, it is for me and I will reward it accordingly. So fasting is for me, meaning fasting is for Allah. And the scholars, they have mentioned around 50 different explanations of what is meant by "it is for me and I will reward it accordingly." And At-Talakani rahimahullah, in his book Hadair al-Qudus, he mentioned more than 50 opinions. And if you were to read all of them, then they end up at two root opinions. The first one is that why Allah Azza wa Jal attributed it to Himself, that it is for me. So it is a secret between Allah and His Lord, because you fulfill it even when you are in private, away from other people. And the other opinion in its interpretation is that when a person fasts, he gains a completely different level of sincerity for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. So not only he keeps away from eating and drinking, but he also keeps away from a lot of other sinful actions and wastage of time that Allah Azza wa Jal called it to be for Himself. So these are the two opinions, and both these two opinions were mentioned by Imam al-Qurtubi rahimahullah in his tafsir. And both these are correct in themselves. And then Allah Azza wa Jal said, I will reward it accordingly, meaning because it is for me, I will not fix for it any limit. So unlike other deeds which I reward from beginning from 10 to 700 multiples, for this I will not set any limit. I will reward it just like that, without any limit. And the ayah in the Quran, Inna Allah, and the ayah in the Quran, Innama yuwaffa sabiruna ajrahum bighayri hisab, that indeed Allah would give the people who bear patience reward without any account. What is meant by it, according to many of the scholars like Mujahid, that what is meant by the people of patience is the people of Siyam, those people who fast. And then Allah Azza wa Jal, He said, for He left His desires in food and drink for my sake. So He mentioned three things. He left His food, He left His desires, His food, and His drink. So a fasting person, he leaves these three things. So Allah as well justifies why He is doing this exceptional case for the fasting person. And then the hadith, it continues that the fasting person has two times when he will rejoice. One at the time he breaks his fast, and one when he meets his Lord. Meaning you become happy twice, once in this dunya and once in the hereafter. The first is when immediately you break your fast. So you become happy that you have drunk water and you have now eaten. And this happiness, in fact much more, will be when you meet your Lord, because Allah has prepared in Jannah for people who bear patience and worship Him how He wants in ways in which you cannot dream. Because Allah mentions in the Quran, that Allah would give them fruits and give them this and give them that, and they would have servants and house and palace and family and wives and servants and whatnot. But after all this, Allah Azza wa says that whatever is in Jannah, whatever Allah Azza wa has prepared, in fact, for you, you cannot think about. So the happiness in the hereafter for the fasting person will be much more because of the surprise which Allah has prepared for His obedient servants. And then Allah Azza wa said, I swear by the one in whose hand my soul is. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, I swear by the one in whose hand my soul is, the smell of the mouth of a fasting person is better in the sight of Allah than the smell of the musk. Meaning, the fasting person, when he fasts, a type of smell comes from his mouth which is unpleasant. But this unpleasant smell is better in the sight of Allah than the smell of musk, because the smell of musk, it comes due to the flies and the insects which are responsible for all the processes which end up at the factories, and then you have the smell of the musk in a perfume bottle. But as for the smell that comes from the mouth of the fasting person, it is due to his hard work for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. So it is more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal than the smell of the musk which people prepare for enjoying this dunya. Unlike the smell of the fasting person which he gets preparing for his akhirah. And then the Shaykh said the narrations on the virtue of fasting, praying during its night, and fasting in general are many. So the narrations are too many, and the author chose to mention these narrations only. The Shaykh Rahimullah then he goes on to say, a believer should take advantage of this time which Allah has favored him with to reach the month of Ramadan, and he should rush towards obedience and beware of disobedience. He should take extra effort in fulfilling the obligations ordained by Allah, especially the five daily prayers, because they are like the spine of Islam, and it is the greatest obligation after the two testimonies of faith, the Shahadatain. Therefore, every Muslim male and female should guard their prayers and perform them at their designated time with tranquility and humbleness. One of the most important obligations for men is to perform these obligatory prayers with the congregation where they are proclaimed, that is, in the mosque. As Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ, and be steadfast in prayer, practice regular charity, and bow down your heads with those who bow down. And Allah Azza wa Jalla says, حافظوا على الصلوات والصلاة الوسطى وقوموا لله قانتين. Guard strictly the five obligatory prayers, especially the middle prayer, and stand before Allah with obedience. And Allah says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Successful indeed are the believers, those who offer their prayers with all solemnity and full submissiveness. To the ayah, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَوَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْوَارِثُونَ الَّذِينَ يَرِثُونَ الْفِرْدَوْسَ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. And those who strictly guard their prayers, these are indeed the inheritors who shall inherit Al-Firdaus, they shall dwell therein forever. The Prophet ﷺ said, the pledge between us, the believers, and them, the disbelievers, is prayer. Whoever abandons it has disbelieved. And the most important obligation after prayer is paying out the zakat. As Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ حُنَفَاءَ وَيُقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمَةِ. And they were not commanded but that they should worship Allah and worship none but Him alone, and perform prayer and give zakat. That is the right religion. And Allah Azza wa Jal said, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَطِيعُوا الرَّسُولَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. So establish regular prayer and give regular zakat and obey the messenger that you may receive mercy. It is evident from the Quran as well as the Sunnah that one who does not pay out his obligatory charity, the zakat, will be punished on the day of resurrection with his wealth. The next most important after these two obligations is fasting the month of Ramadan, which is one of the five pillars mentioned in the saying of the Prophet ﷺ. Islam was established on five pillars: the two testimonies of faith, the establishment of prayer, the giving of zakat, fasting in Ramadan, and pilgrimage of the house, that is Hajj. It is obligatory on a Muslim to guard his fasting and night prayers against that which Allah prohibited, whether word or actions, because the objective of fasting is to obey Allah, glorify His boundaries, struggle against the soul's desires, and to make struggle against the soul's desires to make it follow its Lord, and refrain from what Allah prohibited. Refraining from food, drink, and other things which nullify the fast merely is not the objective behind fasting. That is why it is proven from the Prophet ﷺ that he said, fasting is a protection. So when one of you fasts, let him not touch his wife for sexual relations, and let him not badmouth anyone. And if someone abuses him or fights him, let him say, I am fasting. And it is proven from him ﷺ that he said, whoever does not refrain from falsehood in sayings and deeds and acts of ignorance while fasting, Allah has no need of his abstention from food and drink. From these texts, it becomes clear that it is obligatory on a fasting person to be aware of all things which Allah has prohibited on him, and to observe all that which Allah has obligated on him. As a result of this, it is hoped that Allah would forgive that person, rescue him from hell, and accept his fast and prayer. The author mentioned in this part that a believer should take advantage of this time and he should rush towards obedience. And he mentioned what types of obedience he should give his attention and focus. So, after mentioning the virtues of doing good deeds in this month, he is about to mention the good deeds which we must give our maximum attention. So he says a believer should take advantage of this time which Allah has favored him with to reach the month of Ramadan, and he should rush towards obedience and beware of disobedience. He should exert extra efforts in fulfilling the obligations ordained by Allah, especially by the five daily prayers, because they are like the spine of Islam. So the author is urging the people to make use of the time that you have gained, because Ramadan is a time that you can raise your status from zero to whatever level you want to raise to. And then the author he says, and it is the greatest obligation after the two testimonies of faith. And he says, and Salah is the greatest obligation after the two testimonies of faith. So the most important of the things in Islam is for you to enter it. And the way you enter Islam is by giving the Shahadatain, the two testimonies, that you testify that Allah alone is worthy of worship and that Muhammad is his final prophet and messenger and slave. So after this testimony, after these two testimonies, the most important of things in Islam is the Salah, which is specific to the five daily prayers, which are the Fajr Salah, the Dhuhr, then Asr, Maghrib, and Isha Salah. So these five prayers, each of them have specific number of rak'ahs, specific number of units which you pray for. So Fajr has 2 units, and Zohar has 4, and Asr as well, and Maghrib has 3, and Isha as well has 4, like Zohar and Asr. So these specific number of units are obligatory on every Muslim, male and female, to complete. So whatever is your daily timetable, it should be set in such a way that you're able to arrange these on their time. And he says, therefore, every Muslim, male and female, should guard their prayers and perform them at their designated time with tranquility and humbleness. So, not that you should only perform it however you want, by standing and bowing quickly and running away from the masjid, but it must be done with tranquility and humbleness before Allah Azza wa Jalla. And then the author, he says, from the most important obligations for men is to perform these obligatory prayers with the congregation where they are proclaimed, as Allah Azza wa Jalla says, and be steadfast in prayer, practice regular charity, and bow down your heads with those who bow down and worship. So the meaning of the end part of this ayah, وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ, and bow down your heads with those who bow down and worship, is meant it refers to the congregation in the masjid. So when they bow down, we must be along with them, present in the masjid to bow down. And then the author mentioned other proofs showing the importance of Salah and its obligation. So he says that Allah Azza wa Jalla says, guard strictly the 5 obligatory prayers, especially the middle prayer, and stand before Allah with obedience. And he mentioned the third proof, saying, successful indeed are the believers, those who offer their prayers with all solemnity and submissiveness. The complete ayat, and the part that proves the objective of the author to mention these ayat is where Allah, as he said, successful indeed are the believers. And success, where it is mentioned in the Quran, it does not refer to success of the people in this world, because success in terms of victory in this dunya, it is of no value in the sight of Allah. But when success is mentioned in the Quran, it by default refers to success in the hereafter. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, he mentioned that the believers are successful, and it is those who offer their prayers with all solemnity and submissiveness. And then the author mentioned the fourth proof showing the obligation of performing the 5 daily prayers by mentioning the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, the pledge between us the believers, yani the Muslims, and them, yani the non-Muslims, the disbelievers, is prayer. Whoever abandons it has disbelieved. So the line of division between the Muslims and the non-Muslims is Salah. Just like the line of division between Muslims and non-Muslims is the Shahadatain. So if you were to leave the Shahada, you would become a disbeliever. And the same goes with Salah. If you were to leave the Salah and abandon it, you would become a disbeliever. May Allah preserve us from that end. And the author went on to mention, after giving the proofs of the importance of Salah and its obligation, the next most important obligation by saying, and the most important obligation after prayer is paying out the zakah, the obligatory charity. And he mentioned its proof by saying, Allah says, and they were commanded not but that they should worship Allah and worship Him and worship none but Him alone, and perform prayer and give zakah, that is the right religion. And also in another place in the Quran, where Allah said, so establish prayer and give regular zakah and obey the messenger so that you may receive mercy. And both these ayat show that Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded us to give the zakat, the obligatory charity. And the obligatory charity, it is 2.5% from your saving from the previous year. And zakat has a lot of details for which we could do another book in the future. And the author, he mentioned another ayah which we read. So establish regular prayer and give regular charity zakah, the complete ayah. And the part that proves the objective of the author to mention this ayah is where Allah Azza wa Jal said that you may receive mercy. So the condition of receiving mercy from Allah Azza wa Jal in the hereafter is that you establish the 5 prayers, the 5 salawat, and give regular charity, the obligatory charity, that is zakat. And then the author mentions that the next most important after these two obligations is fasting the month of Ramadan, which is one of the 5 pillars mentioned in the saying of the Prophet ﷺ. Islam was established on 5 pillars: the 2 testimonies of faith, the establishment of prayer, the giving of zakat, the fasting in the month of Ramadan, and pilgrimage of the house of Allah Azza wa Jal. So after the Shahada comes, in terms of its importance and obligation, Salah. And after that comes zakat, and after that comes fasting in the month of Ramadan. So one of the most important things in the life of a Muslim is that every time the month of Ramadan, the 9th month of the lunar calendar, when it comes, he fasts all of the days of this month, fulfilling every obligation. And because this is an obligation from Allah Azza wa Jal, it is recommended that you don't do anything that will make you give up the fasting. For example, in the month of Ramadan, many people travel and go to other countries. Then this type of traveling is something that people should not do in the month of Ramadan, because when you travel, it might become difficult for you to fast. And when you travel and reach to the new destination, it might be even more difficult for you to fast and fulfill other acts of worship, because when you reach the new land, you want to go around, meet the people, and do other social activities, due to which you would not be able to make use of this month as it as much it deserves from us. And the author then he mentioned that fasting is not only about fasting from food and drinks and sexual desires, but it also means, as the Prophet ﷺ said, fasting is a protection, a sawmu junnah. Fasting is a protection, so when one of you fasts, let him not touch his wife for sexual relations, let him not badmouth anyone, and if someone abuses him or fights him, let him say, I am fasting. So, if a person were to abuse you, don't abuse him back. And if he fights you, then don't fight him back unless necessary. You suffice with self defense. And remind the other person that you're fasting and you're not in a mood to invalidate your fast by doing such things, because fasting does not get invalidated and nullified only by eating and drinking and by doing sexual activities, but it also gets invalidated in terms of its reward because of what a fasting person does, what a fasting person commits from the sins. And the author mentioned that it is proven from the Prophet ﷺ that he said, whoever does not refrain from falsehood in his sayings and deeds and acts of ignorance while fasting, then Allah has no need of his abstention from food and drink. Yes, Carl. So the author mentioned, after mentioning the virtues of Ramadan, actually, Carlo, I'm really happy that today you're along with us in the class because, and yeah, you're the second new Muslim in this class because we have another brother and he's along with us in the class today, Yahya, whose name is written here, John Sevik. He is as well a new Muslim. So, and that is why I'm trying to make things simpler and I'm trying to make my language as well easy so that you would be able to follow it. So the author he mentioned, after mentioning some virtues of fasting and the obligation of certain deeds, he says, and the issues which might not be known to some people, from it is a Muslim should only fast out of faith, hoping for the reward from Allah, and not to boast or imitate others in his family or town. The things which should drive him to fast should be his belief that Allah has ordained fasting upon him and his hope to be rewarded by Allah alone. Likewise, for the night prayer during this month, it is obligated that the Muslims perform it with faith and hoping for the reward, not for any other reason. Therefore, the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever fasts in the Ramadan out of faith and anticipating the reward of Allah, then all of his sins of that prior year will be forgiven. And whoever prays night prayers in Ramadan out of faith, anticipating the reward of Allah, then all of his sins prior to that year will be forgiven. And whoever prays night prayers in Laylatul Qadr out of faith, anticipating the reward of Allah, then all of his sins prior to that night will be forgiven. End quote from the author. And we said and explained this part before itself in the beginning of the book, so it does not need further explanation, I believe. So then the author, after that, he mentioned another issue which might not be known to some people. So he said, and from the issues, the ruling of which might not be known to some people, a fasting person may get injured, have a nosebleed, vomit, or accidentally get water into his throat. All these things do not nullify his fast, but intentional vomiting does nullify the fast, as the Prophet ﷺ said, he who vomits unintentionally does not have to make up his fast, but the one who intentionally vomits must make up the fast. And end quote. And what the author meant by saying that a fasting person may get injured, have a nosebleed, vomit, or accidentally get water into his throat, all these things would nullify his fast, meaning that it might happen with you that you get an injury, a cut on your skin, or something of that type, or have a nosebleed, or you might vomit, or you might accidentally eat or drink, and all these things do not nullify your fasting. But there is one thing that the author mentioned: it nullifies your fasting, and that is, as the author mentioned, is vomiting. So if a person were to vomit intentionally, meaning forcefully, then it would invalidate your fast. But vomiting naturally, that wouldn't nullify your fasting. And this is the view of the author which he follows according to one of the opinions. And we mentioned earlier in the explanation of the book of Sheikh Muhammad al-Manajjid that there is another opinion which might be stronger. And then the author, he mentioned other issues which might not be known to some people. But before that, I want to ask, if you were to see a person eating and drinking while fasting, would you stop him from eating and drinking, or would you let him eat and drink? So, is the question clear? If it is clear, you can unmute and answer me. Is the class with me, or there's no one with me? Yes. The question is, if you see someone if you see someone eating and drinking while fasting, meaning forgetfully, would you stop him or not? You should stop him, huh? What is the proof? You do not know the proof. Okay. How about Carlo? What do you say? Yeah, they are Muslims. Yes, yes. They are Muslims and they are fasting, but they forgetfully they began eating. Yeah, yeah. What do you think should be the reason to justify your opinion? Yeah, yeah. It happens. Yeah, that is fine. That is fine. No problem. But how would you justify? Yeah. No, you know what my question is. You know what my question is? It is that, is it better for you to remind him, or is it better for you to let him continue eating? Okay, so what is Yahya saying? Yahya is telling, is Yahya is telling I would remind him. Why would Yahya remind him? Yes, Yahya. Yahya, you're a student of IUU, mashallah, Islamic Online University. So I want clear proof from you. Yes, is Yahya typing? Okay, no problem. So the answer to the question, okay, Yahya is saying I don't think of any clear proof for it exactly. No problem, no problem. The answer to the question, the proof, no problem, no problem, no problem. I'm not looking for the exact thing, but something around as well. Something around the bush is also fine, no problem. But okay, so yeah, yeah. If you know something like that, mashallah, tabarakallah. May Allah grant you fiqh. May Allah grant you understanding of Quran and Sunnah. Very good. And Yahya is saying, I remember hearing of hadith that said we are to remind each other as brothers in other things, even outside of Ramadan. Yes, very good. Yeah, yeah, very good. That we are supposed to remind each other and call each other towards good. Allah Azza wa Jalla said in the Quran, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. And what it translates as is ta'awun al-birri wa taqwa, and cooperate in good and righteousness, upon goodness and righteousness. So we should cooperate with each other to do good things. So some of the scholars are of the view that we are supposed to remind the other person when he is eating, because it is part of the cooperation, as both Yahya and Carlo said, and this seems to be the view of Hamza as well. But there is another opinion of some of the scholars, and that is that you're not supposed to remind that person. And that is a very interesting view, because the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the hadith, which is narrated from Abu Hurairah radiallahu an, that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man nasiya wa huwa sa'im fa akala aw sharaba فليتم صومه فإنما أطعمه الله وسقاه." The one who forgot while fasting, so he ate and drank, then let him complete his fasting, meaning throughout the day, let him continue it until Maghrib, because that does not breaks your fast, and that eating and drinking was from Allah Azza wa Jal. That eating and drinking was from Allah Azza wa Jal. This hadith is there in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, both the most authentic books of hadith. So it is no doubt authentic. So the scholars who said that it is better for us to not remind the person who is eating and drinking, they used this hadith and they said that because the Prophet ﷺ, he attributed this eating and drinking of this person out of forgetfulness towards Allah, then it means that it is something fine, because there is nothing evil that you attribute towards Allah. So for example, if a person were to eat and drink alcohol, drink alcoholic drink, wine for example, would the Prophet ﷺ say that let him drink because Allah has made him drink it? That is something for which we would say astaghfirullah. No, the Prophet ﷺ would not say such a thing, and it is incorrect to attribute such a thing towards Allah, because we do not attribute evil things towards Allah. But the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith, he said, فَإِنَّمَا أَطَعَمَهُ اللَّهُ وَسَقَاهُ, because no doubt that Allah made him eat and drink. So they said that because Allah is the one who made him eat and drink, then you should let him eat and drink. I hope the issue is clear and both the opinions is clear to you in your mind. And I used to follow the view which three of you follow, which three of you think that we should remind the other person. And I used to believe that it is part of cooperating in righteousness and goodness, and that it comes under al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar, commanding the people to good and prohibiting them from anything evil. And because a fasting person, he is prohibited, it is haram for him to eat, we should tell the person that stop eating, this is haram. So it is part of commanding good and prohibiting the evil. This was my previous opinion some time back. This is what I used to hold. But later I found a narration from Ibn Umar radiallahu an, that while he was fasting, he was with his servant, and while fasting, asked he asked his slave for water. So his slave, he told him, why do you want water? You're fasting, you forgot. So his slave, he reminded him that you were fasting. Innaka sa'im. So Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anh, the great Sahabi, he said, Aradullahu an yasqini famana'ani. Allah wanted me to drink water, but you were the one who stopped me from it. Saying that what you have done is something that you shouldn't have done. And similar to this has come from Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu as well. So this was the view of Abdullah ibn Umar and also the view of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And these narrations were mentioned by Imam ibn Hazm rahimahullah in his book Al-Muhalla. Al-Muhalla is one of the books of fiqh. So he mentioned these narrations in this book. And this narration from Abdullah ibn Umar specifically is no doubt authentic. So when we get a narration from a Sahabi, then we are supposed to give precedence to the view of a Sahabi and his understanding above our view and our understanding and our fiqh, because the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they were more honest to Allah Azza wa Jal, more sinful, more sincere, and more knowledgeable, because they stayed with the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and they loved the Sunnah more, and they loved the commands of Allah Azza wa Jal more than any of us. So when we find an opinion from them, then it is upon us to take their opinion and leave the opinion of other people. That is why, after holding the view that it is not necessary for us to remind, now I hold the view that it is better that you leave that person to eat and drink, and you just turn your face and just go somewhere else. Let him eat and drink. So even if he has a whole plate of kapsa and mandi, you just let him continue eating. Sorry? Actually, you know what? Uh, it happens that a person, he forgets and he eats a complete plate. It is very much possible. Yes, it is very much possible. It is possible that you it is very much possible that you go to the kitchen, and because many people are used to this, they early in the morning they go to the kitchen, open the fridge, and take out the halib, the milk, and juice, khalas, in the glass, and gut, all in the stomach. So they're so much used to this thing. And when the month of Ramadan comes, because they are not used to fasting, so this is what happens. And Ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah, he said in his poem which is on Usul al-Fiqh, he said, قول الصحابي حجة على الأصح. قول الصحابي حجة على الأصح. The statement of the Sahabi, it is hujjah, it is a proof according to the more correct opinions. So the statement of a Sahabi, if it does not contradicts statement of other Sahaba, then it is a hujjah that we are supposed to follow. So that is why I chose the opinion of Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu. And the remaining part of the book is very simple, so we'll finish in 10 minutes, inshallah. Then the author he said, and from it is some fasting people might delay their ghusl until after dawn. For example, some women may delay their ghusl after finishing their menstrual period or postnatal bleeding until after dawn if they discover that they have finished bleeding and are subsequently ready to fast before dawn. In this case, such a person must fast and there is no harm in her bathing after dawn, but she may not delay it until sunrise because it is obligatory on her to purify herself and pray the Fajr prayer because before sunrise. Likewise, a person who must bathe because he had sexual intercourse with their spouse, may delay bathing until after dawn because may delay bathing after may delay bathing until after dawn, but must bathe before sunrise in order to pray on time. And it is obligatory on the man to bathe immediately so that he gets to perform Salatul Fajr with the congregation. Then the author in this paragraph he mentioned that after sexual intercourse you must take a bath, and the bath is obligatory for you so that you would be able to perform the salah. So it is not permissible for you to perform salah after sexual intercourse immediately, even if you were to do wudu, because after sexual intercourse it is obligatory for you to perform ghusl, and it is a condition from among the conditions of salah, as we mentioned earlier in Al-Miftahu fil Fiqh ala Madhhabi Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah, the book of Sheikh Saleh al-Usaimi in the Al-Bidayah ila ulumin ila ulumil ghaya. And then the author he mentioned, and from the things which do not nullify the fasting, blood tests, injections, and other things from which nutrition is not intended. But if one can delay them until night, then it is better if it is easy. This is because of the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, leave performing the act which you doubt its permissibility for that which does not causes you to doubt. And his statement ﷺ, he who abstains from doubtful matters has safeguarded his religion and honor. So in this paragraph, the author he mentions that there are some things which do not nullify the fast, but people think that it nullifies. So, for example, if you were to go to a hospital for a blood test, the doctor would take out some of your blood from your body to test it, and that would be completely fine. Similarly, injections for vaccination and other things for which nutrition is not intended, then such a type of injection is as well not a nullifier of your fast. But if you were to take injection, for example, those which you take for getting nutrition like glucose and other types of nutritions, then that would definitely break your fast, because when Allah Azza wa Jal has prohibited us from food and drinks, then anything similar to that as well as prohibited. So just like food and drinks give you nutrition, these injections like glucose which gives you nutrition are as well from among the nullifiers of your fast. And they also mentioned a very important thing, which is that if one can delay taking them until night, then it is better if it is easy. So it is better for you to delay all this until night so that you don't put yourself into trouble and questions and doubt, because it might be that the doctor is giving you an injection. Now, what injection is he giving you? You would have to ask the doctor, doctor, what injection are you giving me? Does it give me nutrition? The doctor would be like, if he's a non-Muslim, he would be confused. So it's better for you to just avoid going to the hospital if it is not necessary to be done in the morning time. You go in the night. And then the author he mentioned, and from the issues the ruling of which might not be known to some people. Not having tranquility in Salah, be it in the obligatory or the voluntary prayers, many texts prove that tranquility during prayer is one of the pillars of Salah, and that one's prayer is not correct without it. And it is to not rush during prayer and to have khushu in it, and to not hurry from any position until each joint and bone returns to its original position. Many people pray Tarawih night prayer in Ramadan in a way that they do not neither understand nor have tranquility in it. Rather, it resembles the pecking of a rooster. Such a way of performing prayer is invalid, and the person who does that is sinful and not rewarded. So he mentioned here that those who people peck like a rooster, meaning how a rooster, how a bird, it pecks and eats its foot on the ground. You know, it moves its neck eh, up and down quickly. That's how some of the people perform their salah, especially the Taraweeh prayer. So such a type of prayer is not rewarded. Rather, that type of salah is sinful. And we discussed this earlier. And then the author he mentioned, and from the issues, the ruling of which might not be known to some people. Some people think that they cannot pray less than 20 rakat in Taraweeh, and thus think that they may not pray more than 11 or 13, and this is all misunderstanding. Rather, it is a mistake that opposes the proofs. There are many authentic narrations from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam which show that the matter is flexible, and so it has not been fixed. So it has no fixed number which is not allowed to be changed. Rather, it is proved that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed 11 rakahs sometimes and 13 at others, and less than that in Ramadan on other occasions. When he sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked about night prayer, he said, continue to pray 2 rakah prayers, 2 unit prayers, until you fear that dawn might come, until you fear that Fajr might come. Then one should pray a single rakah to conclude his night prayer with it. He sallallahu did not set a limit for a number during Ramadan or other times, and that is why people sometimes prayed 23 rakahs during the time of Umar. May Allah be pleased with him. Some of the Salaf, rahimahullah, may Allah have mercy on them, used to pray 36 and pray 3 rakah as odd with prayer. Others prayed 41, as was mentioned by Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, rahimahullah, and other scholars. Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, stated that the matter is flexible and that it is best for the one who can prolong his recitation during prayer and prolong his bowing and prostration to pray a less number of rakahs, but it is better for a person who recites short chapters and shortens his bowings and prostration to pray more in number. The one who looks into the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ will realize that praying 11 or 13 rakah is the best way to pray the night prayer during Ramadan or any other time. This will coincide with the way that the Prophet ﷺ worshipped Allah in his way. ﷺ is the and his way ﷺ is the closest to tranquility and humbleness during prayer. It is the best for the one who prays with the Imam during Ramadan to remain there until the Imam finishes, because the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who prays the night prayer with the Imam in the congregation until he finishes will get the reward of praying the night prayer all night long. End quote. They also mentioned here some of the issues with regards to the Taraweeh. And Taraweeh is the prayer which is prayed in the night with the congregation in Ramadan. And the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed with his Sahaba for few nights of Ramadan. And the number of units for this Salah is not fixed. So it is unlike Salatul Fajr, for which the number of units is fixed for 2. And Salatul Asr, the number of units is fixed for 4 prayers, 4 units. But for Salatul Taraweeh, you can pray 2 rakahs if it is possible for you. You can pray 4, you can pray 6, and you can keep increasing this way to whatever number you want to pray. As the author mentioned in sufficient detail, and the people throughout the time they have been praying the number of rakahs that they are capable of praying. So it is fine if you pray 36 or 48 or 58, how much ever you want to pray, you pray. And there's no fixed number. But the most important thing is that you pray with tranquility and not hurry. And he said that it is best for the one who prays with the Imam during Ramadan to remain there until the Imam finishes, because the Prophet ﷺ said that the one who prays the night prayer with the Imam in the congregation until he finishes will get the reward of praying the night prayer all night long. So, if you were to begin the Taraweeh prayer with the Imam and finish with him, you would get the reward as if you have prayed all night long, even if you were not praying, even if you were not in the masjid, even if you were not doing any act of worship, even if you were sleeping in the house, you would get the reward of praying all night long. And last thing that the author mentioned, as he says, it is recommended for all Muslims to exert extra effort in all types of worship during this month, such as performing optional prayers, reciting Quran with tadabbur and understanding, and increasing in glorifying Allah, thanking Him and asking Him forgiveness for Him, supplicating to Him, enjoining good and forbidding evil, calling people to Allah, helping the poor and needy, working hard and being dutiful to parents, maintaining ties with kinfolks, being kind to neighbors, visiting the sick, and other types of good. As in the previous narration, the Prophet ﷺ said, Allah looks at your completion in virtuous deeds, boast in front of the angels about them. So show Allah from yourselves that which is good, because the miserable one is the one who is deprived from the mercy of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ also said, whoever performs any good deed in it, i.e. Ramadan, will obtain the reward of an obligatory act, and whoever performs an obligatory act of devotion will be rewarded 70 times more in Ramadan than in any other month. It is also reported that the Prophet ﷺ said, Umrah during Ramadan equals performing Hajj in reward. In another narration, he said, it equals performing Hajj with me in reward. And the narrations which prove the legitimacy of competition in the issues of virtue during this month are many, and Allah is asked to give tawfiq to us and to all Muslims to what pleases Him, and accept our fast and night prayer, and to rectify our affairs and give us refuge from all deviant trials and tests, such just like we ask Him to rectify the rulers of the Muslims and to unite them upon the truth. Indeed, it is in His hands, and He is able to do it. And may peace be upon you and mercy of Allah and His blessing. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The author ended his letter by mentioning some final advices for the believers to do in Ramadan. So he said, don't busy yourself in only one single act of worship, but try to do all of these. So perform the optional prayers, the extra prayers, recite the Quran and try to understand it by reading the translation and its explanation. The Quran translation and explanation is available in English language. You have it in your language, Philippines, as well. You have it available online. You have lectures available online. Listen to them. And he said, increase in glorifying Allah, meaning saying Subhanallah and thanking Him for whatever Allah has given you, and asking for forgiveness and supplicating to Him, till the other acts which he mentioned, like being dutiful to the parents, meaning if you have not spoken to them from some time, then give them a call, speak to them, smile to them, because a lot of people smile to foreigners and other people, but when it comes to smiling to their own family, they don't smile, and that is very weird. And he mentioned maintaining ties with the kinfolks, being kind to the neighbors, so you speak to your neighbors and visit the sick people and do other types of good deeds. And he mentioned that doing Umrah in this month of Ramadan, it is equal to performing Hajj. So the reward that you get by doing Umrah in Ramadan, it is equal to performing Hajj in terms of the reward. So the reward that you get for doing Hajj you will get it if you were to do Umrah in the month of Ramadan. So those who live in Saudi, it is very easy for them, and those who live outside, then if it is possible for them, they should try to apply for a visa from the Saudi embassy and try to get it if it is possible to achieve this reward. And he ended by making dua for tawfiq, meaning asking Allah Azza wa Jal to make it easy every good deed and everything that pleases him. And this is the end of the explanation of this short comprehensive letter. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to have mercy on us and to accept our gathering as a gathering of knowledge. Jazakumullahu khair for your attentive listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.